And then guest Paul. That's pretty neat. All right, so let me see. I can add you left.
I stayed at the
Boom.
shop.
Look at that.
Right on.
Um, and finish. I guess we're live. Let me see.
Cool.
Let's see. How do I look at the comments? Oh, looks like it's going to show right there. And does it show how many people are signed on?
I see one viewer, but I don't know if that's you.
Let's see. What's that? That's broadcast status. Show, hide, zoom. This is, well, if you guys can see this, actually, I can look on my phone and see if it's broadcasting. Because I can go on the Patreon and I can just go to the link. Let me see this. Is it going? Oh, yeah, we're there.
Cool.
It's delayed slightly, but oh no, that was it started. Let me see. Well, I don't. Let me see if I can. Oh, there we go. It is. We have a comment. Um, is Anthony going to join too?
It should be.
Let's see. Well, we're like right on time. Um,
Yeah.
what's going on, Steve? Midline. What's happening? Hey, dude. How's your new Volk? Did you get it yet? Um, I think that's the guy that you just sent AK to.
Oh yeah. I can't see the comments, but you can.
Let me see if I can share the comments. Oh, there he is. Tony is joining. Let's see. Add. Left. Boom. Look at this.
Yo, what's going on, dude?
All right. Well, this program to do this live on Instagram or on YouTube cost me like $400. So,
Oh shit, no way.
but this actually looks pretty legit and it's working. And
Sweet.
I can see the comments and I can actually, supposedly, I can drag the comments onto the screen. Um, there we go. That's his comment on your Volk.
Let me see. Hold on. Let's see if I can see him.
Can you see it, Paul?
Nah,
No, maybe they
Yeah, I
can.
can't see it either.
Well,
that's all right.
um,
You're the
cool.
you're the commentator.
Yeah, it says it's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Good.
It says
neat.
it's asked to hide distracting items. There we go. I'm gonna unhide that.
Well,
Oh, is that what?
boys, I
Yeah.
appreciate it jumping on, and it's actually very fitting considering you guys gave away the rifle at the end of for Christmas, and he is sitting in the comments right now. So
Oh, sweet. Hell yeah.
we
Nice.
he said it's amazing. He's stoked, and I got some questions for you guys, but if you guys don't know, here we'll do our intros. We'll start with the man with the master plan, Paul. No, I mean Anthony. And let's do the left to right on who you guys are and what you guys do at Meridian.
Oh, we're going with me first?
Yeah,
Not Paul?
Yeah, you first. No, you.
you're the boss.
Yeah, yeah, I'm Tony. I'm the owner, one of the owners, and just had some crazy ass idea to build guns, and somehow it's working. So it's
All right, Paul.
so yeah, man. I run everything, from design to the manufacturing aspect. Pretty much the social media. I do all that while I'm on the shitter. You know, Paul's been my right hand man since we opened up the shop. He's taken care of me. He put food on my table, selling my guns when nobody would buy them. So early on. So yeah, man.
Well, I'm blessed to call both you guys friends, and I'm glad that I started Patreon last year, and these guys have been super solid. And I've got like 300 people on here that sign up every month for. We do Q&As and stuff. And I was trying to think of another way to do kind of something to give them. And Paul, you remember when we did these during COVID because like we couldn't see
Yeah.
anybody, and so
Yeah.
I was doing Instagram lives, basically just getting all my buddies from the industry because we didn't have a shot show that year. Like we couldn't do shit. And tequila, by the way.
What type of tequila?
Yeah, it's anyways, it's like it looks like a little fucking ghost. It's weird. Anyways, so I wanted to do this, and I figured why not start with considering you guys were the giveaway gun at the end of this last year. We'll start with you guys, and I think that last time this went really well, and Paul and I went down the rabbit hole of lots of stuff about AKs and kind of what makes a good one, like, and then we even talked about like what ones that you guys know of are worth buying that are factory guns, like what are common problems you see and kind of how to diagnose them, that kind of stuff. And I thought that'd be a great video to leave from the boys themselves on Patreon. So here we are.
Nice. Cool.
But Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, man. So I'm the project manager at Meridian. I've been with Tony since early 2017, and yeah, we throw shit on the wall and we see if it sticks, and we make badass AKs. So normally, if you're reaching out through our customer service team, it's either myself or a few of the other guys that's going to respond back to you, and I'll handle all the dealer stuff, and I'm the beard model of the shop and that kind of stuff, right?
Well, I'm
Um,
competing for
but
that
no, man,
job. So.
yeah, we always do, yeah. No, man, so I'm very thankful to be working where I'm at. Love what I do, and we get to turn out, I think, the best AKs, in the U.S. And yeah, the plans for world domination, right? So
Oh yeah.
we're gonna
Yep.
we're gonna keep it going.
And then I actually, so the way I got connected with you guys, and obviously Paul knows the story, but because him and I became, that was the start of our bromance,
Mhm.
was, dude, guys, I was literally just a fan. And what happened was, is I kind of started that, and these guys know, I started my kind of quest for um, foreign service rifles. And AKs was where I had to start because I had trained a bunch of Jundies to not shoot themselves with one, but I'd never ran like a modernized one. And social media at the time, I mean, it was basically you guys and Rifle Dynamics because he was, what's his face was still there. And, uh, and so I just went on your
Yeah,
guys'
Jim.
site
Yeah.
and I was like, hey, Little Dirty, it looks like my style, like purchase. And at the time, it took quite a while to get my gun. But always communicative. I bullshit with Paul and and that was kind of, I was like, yo, you're not that bad of a dude, and he was like, you're not that bad of a dude either. And then we touched tips and cuddled, and it was good. Um, so
Yeah, that's basically how it went.
yeah, and so now I have 3 Meridian guns between my Izzy, my Dirty, my Redone Dirty, um, and the Crink, with many more to go.
Mhm. Yep.
so, so cool. Then let's just start from the beginning, kind of, because I really like your story, Anthony, of kind of how you got into the AKs in particular, because where you came from, kind of on, and kind of dabbling in a bunch of different platforms, if I remember the story correctly, before kind of settling into the AK world.
Yeah. No, we it was kind of out of desperation because I was transitioning from my old work, which was like managing fighters and throwing mixed martial arts promotion shit. And I had, 2 daughters and then another one on the way. And I was going, fuck, what am I going to do to survive in the world? And firearms was always a passion of mine. So I just kind of, doubled down and started figuring out where I fit in and what I could do. And I've always built guns in my garage. That's always been a thing for me. And I reached out to a friend of mine, Justin, who had a machine shop and said, hey, I got this fucking crazy idea. let's build, ARs, right? And that was during the time of, I think it was Obama time, and everyone's freaking out and you're not going to get your guns. And I'm like, well, if I can make my own shit, then I don't have to worry about it. And so I started dabbling down the AR-15 world. We were, making parts for different companies, doing all that shit, and started building AKs on the side for fun. And then I just realized I saw the AR world, and it just didn't excite me. It just was a bunch of Legos, the same old bullshit. Their shit looks like, Tron, space aged bullshit at the time, time of the blue and red anodizing of everything.
Oh yeah.
And and I just didn't see any future in that. And there was a passion for AKs, and so I started just ripping them apart and figuring out how to make them better. And taking Segas and parts kits, and literally spent every single dime I had, sold everything I had just to buy the tooling. And wife was working full time to support me, and I was working 6 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to figure it out. What am I going to do? How are we going to build these things? And all the way from folding receivers from flats and parts kits, and just then we started doing Sega conversions. And then I reached out to Paul because he was down the street. He was in a gun store down the street from us, and we got to talking, and he's like, hey, you want to do some custom builds? And then we started doing some Sega conversions, and he started selling them at the store. And then I was like, hey man, if you ever want to leave this job, come on full time, come on over. And like literally the next week, Paul comes knocking on the door. It's like, hey, you got a job? And I was like, no, but I'll figure it out. So he I didn't have, there wasn't a job. And I kind of took Paul on as like an apprentice to building guns. And then unfortunately he had the task of dealing with customers, because I didn't have the patience to deal with customers.
I
And
never would have thought
and then
that.
it just and then it just got busy. And we started off as doing conversions and custom builds and doing one-off stuff, and the goal was just to build the craziest shit we possibly could think about. And it was everything that we built, like all of our platforms we've done, is all shit Paul and I have done for ourselves. It wasn't for the general public. It wasn't like, hey, I think people are going to like this. It was about like, hey, let's build a gun for us. Like, what are you going to build? I'm like, oh, cool. Let's offer it to the general public if they want it. And that's just kind of, that's kind of what we've been doing. And,
I think it makes me think about, like, with all the guns that I put my name on, like I never build them with anybody else in mind but me. Um, and it's funny how that ends up being something that resonates instead of, like, if you try to read the market, it dude, the market doesn't even know what it wants. And
yeah,
and it's like sometimes when something's built out of passion because there's a use or it's aesthetically pleasing to you, there's probably going to be more people that find it the same. But like, I watch these companies try to build what they think the industry wants, like instead of like what they actually as like shooters or consumers would want, and they just miss the mark.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What
It's
AKs?
it,
I was gonna say, what lines did you guys start with? Where did you guys begin?
Oh, so first one was Polish parts kits. That was my first experience, was buying a bunch of Polish parts kits. And I didn't know really where to get good receivers. So it was during the time of like Nodak Spud and all these other fucking weirdo receiver companies. And I just was like, oh fuck, I'm gonna build these things myself. So I started folding the flats, and then then I got a spot welder and started learning how to spot weld the rails in, and did all that shit. And then I started putting together Polish stuff, because at that time the Polish stuff was the cleanest shit on the market. I saw Polish stuff that was better than any Russian stuff I've ever seen. And it was the cleanest, the original military stuff. And
Yeah, all the Circle 11 stuff, right?
yeah, the Circle 11 stuff. And then and then I was doing Bulgarian, 74 stuff, and that shit was like $120 for a parts kit, at that time. And so that was nice. And we started off kind of with those two deals, and then there was a big demand for the Sega conversions. I saw, like, Jim Fuller and Krebs were doing Sega conversions, and I was like, then I started doing a bunch of Sega conversions. And then I was like, fuck, this is gay as fuck. Like, I mean, I know it's a Russian gun and it's a sporting gun, but you're sitting here welding up all these holes, doing 3 times the amount of work just to have these Russian parts. And that was, some people like that. And for me, it wasn't interesting to me because you're working off of somebody else's gun, right? You're not building it from the ground up. So to me, um, there's nothing to it. It's like you're just taking a gun. It's like buying a car from the lot and then slapping some fucking rims and tires and a supercharger on it and say you built it.
Yeah.
And so we started working on the Segas. There was a lot of Sega conversion stuff, chopping barrels, doing that stuff. And then then we kind of came up with our own combo gas block that we kind of, we kind of bit that style from what Jim Fuller was doing with his stuff. Because I saw what Jim was doing, I was like, "Fuck, that's actually he's doing a good job, right?" And I was like, "Well, how do we do it better, right?" And that was our goal: was we had to beat Rifle Dynamics, like from a very very first started. That was kind of the game. They set the bar, right? And we're like, okay, what do we got to do, right? And then it started, moving into, building off of hiring kits, doing clone correct stuff, and we did quite a few Russian stuff, and then we got into some Romanian stuff, Hungarian, tons of Yugo shit, doing like Yugo restoration stuff. That was pretty cool. We had some really cool Yugo surplus stuff, and then we had a friend of mine, Jason Swore, who was he was the head dude from Skill Set, and he was also the photographer. Paul, what was the name of his company? Do you remember? Jason's, who was
Uh,
I know
Trying to think.
I know not
Yes.
Skill Set, but Jason was shooting all the magazine covers for all these magazines, and he had a collection, and he had a good group of friends who were all builders, and they wanted these parts kits built out correct. And so we just kind of hoard ourselves out to all the parts kits people, and we're building everybody's parts kits for them. And then so we've pretty much seen everything. We started with the Polish stuff, the original Circle 11. That's really where we started.
So
And then
I was going to
yep.
say that the AK market, and you and I, and Paul and I have talked enough now at this point. Like it, especially with which is kind of where takes us into what you guys are doing now. But the was very much at the whim of what was being imported at the time, right? Like you guys are very much as an AK builder, or have been anyways, at the whim of what is coming into the country.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. So when stuff was coming in the country, we'd build off of it, whether it was Romanian stuff, Russian stuff, and then when sanctions cut off for the Segas, those things depleted, and that was Paul and I's first wake up call of like, oh fuck, what are we gonna do, right? Segas were like a bread and butter thing for everybody. It was a gravy train for Krebs and Rifle Dynamics and everybody else. It was, customers would sit in Segas, or they would buy a bunch of Segas, and then they customize them, and then they turn them around and sell them. So that was an interesting wake up call for us, and we kind of saw where the industry was going. Is like, hey, we're depending on shit that's coming in from other countries, and Joe, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, and I know Paul and I talk about it all the time. But for years and years, we've been fed overseas shit, like literally seconds and thirds. We've never got like, you might be lucky and you can get the firsts, but the firsts go to the military. We don't see that shit here. We see the defects, right? We see all the stuff that literally they don't want or don't use anymore. So, and that's what we've been working with. So we figured it out.
Eric, we'll get to your question. We're going to get there to all the tuning stuff. The guys say that the live stream's coming in crispy, so we're good.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
The and so I know you actually just brought up a good point. Like working off seconds and thirds, how much work? I know the question, but I know the answer. But like I want to talk about it. Like depending on the parts kit, how much work does go in? What how much work goes into the parts kits to make them a Meridian?
Oh fuck. Let's start with D-mill. So when we were getting the parts kits in, they were D-milled. The receivers were, you had the receivers chopped up based off of ATF specs, were chopped into three, right? They were torched, right? And then same with the barrels, right? So you have all these parts that were populated on the barrels, and you have all the parts that were, riveted onto the receiver. So we had to go through there and literally demill and depopulate the barrel, which is your gas block, your front side block, your rear side block, and you had to push these pins out that were tight as fuck. Most of the time they were rusty, and then you'd have to press those off, carefully so you didn't tear them up and fuck them up, because that's what you had to work with, right? And if some of these things were pressed on with two thou press fit, which is nasty, where it was tearing up the barrel on the way out. Same with the trunnions. Trunnions were riveted in, so we had to just we'd have to carefully destroy and disassemble all of these little parts, and then we'd go back into going through all the surfaces, hand tuning all the little burrs. So when you're in the demill process, you're using punches, you're using drills, you're using end mills of cutting all the extra parts away, and kind of just unraveling this this little balloon of parts, and then you've got to put that shit back together. And so all of these little burrs and all that stuff we'd have to file and hand tune. And some of the stuff was actually, there was a lot of stuff that was in use. So some of the in use stuff we had to QC and check, because we found trunnions with cracks in them, trunnion, the holes for the barrels that were not correct, or they were oblong, all kinds of different stuff. So I mean, some of these things, we'd get, what would suck is when you get a chunk of parts kits in, and you get a chunk of them that were just shit, and then you'd have to go, oh fuck, what do we do with them? And they go in the Frankenstein bin, and we figure out what we're going to build with that down the road. So, but yeah, hours and hours of demilling, and just taking the shit apart. So demilling process is nasty. That's where you fuck yourself up. That's early on, you'd always see pictures of Paul and I with our hands just filleted from metal.
I
Blade, elbows just completely jacked up because all you're using is a sledge basically, or a ball peen hammer, and doing this
Yeah,
manually, you know?
yeah. I can't even count
So,
how many chunks of foreign metal I have in my body still.
I I have to say, like, because obviously one of mine's built off of that Izzy, like, and
mhm.
my original little dirty. Paul, you know what parts kit that was originally? We just did it to your guys' stuff, but
Yours
Bulgarian.
originally was Bulgarian. Yeah. So it was NOS mill Bulgarian.
like, if you guys have never seen a Meridian gun, like, comparatively to, like, if you guys have ever bought a parts kit, like when you buy a parts kit, like I got a G3 parts kit that my Dakota's built off of, and like the parts come, they're like they can be really fucking haggard. Like they weren't they weren't like graciously and gently put on foam and shipped overseas. Like no. And so to
No.
see what comes out the other side is where the like you kind of have to appreciate where the most likely that parts kit started to kind of understand where it ends up. And so I got a hats off to you. That's obviously why Paul and I talked before I ever got my gun. Just like once I got it, I was like, okay, these guys are different because the if you guys can build an AK that looks like that, then yeah, let's fucking party. And I'm a hard use, like well built whore in the end. So um, it's it lends to us being good friends, which is nice.
Yeah.
But the I was just trying to read what they said. Okay, but cool. And then so, what brought on the style that you guys I think are known for best? Like the Vulcan Little Dirty is one thing, but you guys are known for the Apocalypse series.
Yeah, that was a total fucking accident. That was us building off of we Romanian kits. There was a guy by the name of Drew. I'm not going to say his last name, but he sent Paul and I. I remember the phone call. I was sitting in a car wash, and the guy's like, "I got 20 parts kits, and I want you guys to build them all at once." And that was our first big deal. We were like, "What? This guy wants to build 20 at once?" Normally, you get one customer that has one or two, right? And this guy's like, "I want you to build all 20." He's like, "And I want them to look like original, like they came off the battlefield." And I was like, "Oh fuck, okay, well that's different." And we've seen so many parts kits come through the shop, right? And we know what the patina looks like, and we know what all that stuff looks like. So we started, and it was they were the G series
Yeah.
Romies, right? Yeah.
Romanian. Yeah. The Romanian guard rifles.
Yeah, and they had one actually had some numbers on the stock. Yeah, I think they were in black. I don't think they were in white. And then obviously the guard rifles had a black stripe on them. So we started painting the stripes, and we basically did a clone of those G series rifles, right? and we tried all different types of coatings, and we couldn't figure it out. We were doing paint and we were doing all kinds of other stuff, and we were trying to figure out what to use, and we went through so many different processes, and finally we figured out like the key to it was was matte bluing. And that was kind of our secret to it, was using the matte blue finish. So we basically tear the entire rifle down, do the demilling, rebuild the rifle back to original, like pristine condition. Like, so when it was done, it would look like an original rifle, like like it was perfect. And then we'd have to go through and destroy it. And we would sit there with steel wool and WD-40 and Scotch Brite on some parts, and then just kind of fine tune it, and it gave it this weird apocalyptic battlefield look. And we were like, oh wow, this is fucking kind of cool. And so we just started experimenting with tons and tons of different techniques. And with the wood, we would bleach the wood, and then we even lit it on fire a couple times, and then
Yeah.
just to smoke it out. I think we still did it. I think we do that on the famine still too. So we
Yep.
burn the wood just to give it that look, and then we'll come through and do a multiple staining processes, and it gave it this just weird battlefield look. And it was just a bullshit idea. After we finished this guy's rifles, they came out really tits. And then I was like, fuck, we should do like Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. These look like apocalypse, and let's do a little line of this stuff. And Pestilence was literally a rifle that Paul and I built for ourselves. We took these Romy G kits and turned them into our own, like, hey, if this is the end of the world, right? And shit hits the fan, what are you gonna find on the battlefield because of the parts kits here, right? What are you gonna see, right? You're gonna see Segas, you're gonna see, all this other shit as far as AKs. And what are you going to see, what would be built out, and this is what we would do. And that's kind of the influence was from the Balkan Wars, really. And what we saw from some of the rifles over there, they had a shit ton of trench art stuff. And the numbers thing was me just ripping that off. And actually there was a company back in the days who did the numbers before us, and that was Dead Goose Society. Remember that, Paul?
Yep.
Yeah, so Dead Goose Society, they were the first guys I actually saw do white numbers. And I was like, oh, that's a badass idea. So I snaked that from them. And and it was really cool. So then we just, we chopped the barrel 14.5, did our gas block on it, pin and welded muzzle devices, and kind of made it, had a teeny bit of a modern look to it because it was shorter. And yeah, and then that kind of came up. That's how we kind of came up with the apocalypse thing, and then it just skyrocketed. Everybody wanted it, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Like it was that whole apocalyptic look. It caught on, and it was just for fun. It was not a joke. It was just something we did for fun that we didn't expect people to like. We expected more people to hate it, because I mean we still get hate for it. People yelling about it all the time, like, oh, you can fucking steel wool anything and da da da. It's like people don't realize the attention to detail that we do, and this like build from the ground up, and we literally rebuild this thing perfect, and then we got to fuck it all up. I mean, it got to the point to where we were taking ball peen hammers and just slightly hitting the rivets just to give it like deformed looks, right? Because some of the rivets look too nice. So
But it was cool because like the other guys that were doing the stocks, they were actually doing rack numbers, whereas us we're like,
Mhm.
hey, let's throw the year of the kit on the stock.
Oh, I think
Yeah,
So when guy
such a good
Yeah,
idea.
so when guys were seeing that they were like 69s on stocks and 81s and all this other stuff, they're like, they just thought we were screwing around, but we're like, no, that's the
yeah,
year of the kit.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
and then it just evolved. And then we had people that we opened it up to custom numbers. So as long as it was a 2-digit number, we'd throw it on your buttstock. It was cool because I mean, like this is one of the 556 ones that we did, but you know, buttstock number, all that cool jazz, and um, to be honest, it's my favorite rifle, even to this day. Like for the
yeah.
longest time, people hated the Romanian dongs. They're like, these are the biggest piece of shit handguards ever. I don't know why anybody would run these things. Yeah, I agree. You can't run them on barricades and shit like that. But at the end of the day, dude, I think Romania started building those rifles out in 62 or 63. And I think the first or second year, they had standard palm swells, and then in '64 they made those dongs, and it's great. You know, it's the most comfortable feeling AKM pattern
Yeah.
rifle that's out there. So
Yeah.
especially
Agreed.
when you modernize it and you cut that barrel, and it's just like it's just money.
They're such a cool looking gun, and was honestly the gun that brought me to you guys. Um, I just I was on a kick to modernize everything, which then brought us to the Little Dirty and Volk series. So
Yeah.
you guys, those came after that Pestilence or the Apocalypse series, correct or no?
About the same time, yeah, Paul. We were experimenting
Yeah,
with both at the
I
same
I
time.
think it was the same time. Yeah, I think we had already
Yeah.
built out some of the pestilence stuff. We just
Yeah.
didn't throw it out there for sale. Like there was customers
Yeah.
that had it. So
Yeah. Yeah. The little dirty stuff and the Volk stuff came to us, but because when Sharps made that receiver, um, we couldn't get our hands on it, uh, and then there was a guy who on Instagram was goes by Dirty Harry, and he's a good friend of ours. His name's Chris, and he approached me and was like, "Hey, man, I saw what Jim's doing with Sharps Brothers." He's like, "I don't want something that looks like theirs." He's like, "I want something of its own and that's unique." And that's when we built that little pistol for him. That's why we named it the Little Dirty, was after him. It was kind of it was a joke as well. It wasn't, there was nothing behind it except just making fun of him. So, and yeah, and then that took off. The Little Dirty really took it to another level. The Volk actually came. The Volk, the Volk came by accident. Do you remember that customer, Paul, who sent it to us? And he wanted that
yes,
that longer rail
yes.
on it, and I'm like, this is so fucking gay, and I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. And this one kid had this vision of it, and I built it out, and I was like, oh shit, this looks fucking badass, and it actually felt really good too. And I told the kid, I was like, hey, I'm gonna steal this design. He's like, cool, go for it. So, and yeah, it was this. I forgot what the kid's name was, but he was actually the original person that came up with that look. It was a custom build for a customer. He had a Sharps Brothers receiver. He sent it in, and he wanted that longer rail, and I fucking hated it. I thought it was so stupid, and just it flowed, it fit, and it
Yeah,
came together, and I was like, oh
I
yeah,
want to say that he wanted a 16-inch barrel to begin with, and you're like, fuck that. Let's do a chopped front end. And I don't think you gave
yeah,
him an option. We're doing this whether you like it or not. You can put this
yeah. We
handguard
did.
on. And when it happened, we sat back and we looked at, we're like, yeah, okay, yes,
You can have any
yeah,
color as long as it's black, right?
exactly, yeah, yep.
No, that's awesome. And then, so that carried you guys. That's what you guys been doing for quite a while until obviously recent changes and stuff has been those two lines, and then you guys did some alphas and some like
Yep.
limited run stuff.
Yeah, yeah. The alphas. I mean, when the Zenko stuff first hit the states, I mean, we were doing that shit. I don't want to fucking pat ourselves on the back, but I don't remember anybody else doing alphas when we were doing them. Paul, do you? We were
No,
just we were go
not
we were getting we were getting that stuff in, and we were just, our goal was to clone those things, and we
yeah,
were
not
doing
in
them
the
on whole
volume that
grain
we were
kits.
doing. Yeah,
No, 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 no. They were just onesies, twosies,
yeah,
back in the days.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, and then
yeah.
yeah, we did those, and then we did like Seven Sins, and we were just coming up with different concepts and literally just throwing shit on the wall and seeing if it sticks. It was based off of parts kits. What could we find? What was out there? And what could we create? I mean, I remember one time we had a huge dry spell in parts kits, and we couldn't get anything in, and there was all these Yugo RPKs floating around, and I was like, dude, Paul, let's just build out a shit ton of RPKs and let's call those war. And we got all these Yugo RPKs in, and that was a nightmare building those things. It was a
Dude,
nightmare about those.
the demilling, the demilling.
Okay, well, before the demilling was the degreasing, because these motherfuckers
Yes.
came in a box of cosmoline. Like, you literally had to dip your hand in there, like, if you would open up a container of grease, right? You'd have to dip your hand in there and pull these fucking parts out. And the cosmoline wasn't like this regular cosmoline. It was this weird, like, tacky shit that you just could not get off of you. And we finally figured out a way to degrease them after fucking, you know, weeks and weeks. And the secret to demilling cosmoline to anybody out there is WD-40. It literally melts it right off. You just spray the shit on it and you just watch it drip. So,
Damn.
yeah, and then to demill them, like Paul said, what was crazy is the old school Yugo RPK receivers. They were actually riveted together because they have the bulge front trunnions. They were riveted together, and then they were actually spot welded to the trunnion. So they spot welded through the receiver to the trunnion, which is fucking cool, I think. I told Paul, I'm like, dude, we need to do that, And so, but yeah, so it's that those were fucked to demill because you had to undo a spot weld on a trunnion and not fuck it up.
Damn.
So yeah, that was not fun. So
So
yeah,
We
so
got
that
really
was the
good at doing that.
Yugos.
We got really good. Yeah.
Yeah, we were expert demillers.
so fast forwarding to the last 2 or 3 years, um, and then obviously, what kind of pushed you towards what you are doing now? Um,
Lack of parts kits. We were tired of it. I was tired of depending on, overseas crap that was coming in. And there's still crap coming in. And it's just, we have this weird fascination and I still like it, don't get me wrong. But we have this weird fascination of, building these things out. It's like take, you know, take a 1955 Chevy that's completely rusted out and you got to rebuild it on every single fucking gun, right? And for me, and I know Paul and the rest of the crew is like our goal has always been to do our own stuff, right? Build American AKs off of the technology and the materials we have available now, which is way better than what they were in the past, right? No matter what anybody says, they have all this shit. It's like, no, like we have shit now that is way more next level machining capabilities and don't get me wrong, the stuff they did back then was amazing for not having what we have now, right? Like I have no clue how they made some of this shit. And that was the idea was we had parts kits that were, we got fucked on a parts kits deal. We lost 150K on an overseas parts kit deal and just got fucked by some dude in Texas who was a reputable importer, and that almost sunk us. That literally almost buried us, and that pushed us back. And that was right during COVID, and that was one of our biggest flaws and hiccups in the business was we got burned for 150K, which we barely had to keep us afloat, and we bought a big old chunk, container full of Romanian parts kits, and we got fucked by this dude. And I was like, you know what, this is never happening again. We're gonna make our own shit and fuck buying overseas stuff. And it just left a bad taste in our mouth was dealing with all this overseas crap. And our goal now and has always been is build the best AKs. So the only way to do that is quality control, and how do you control the quality is bring it in house, right? And
well, yeah, I was going to say, I think that for a long time it was you couldn't have touched the quality that you could get for the price you could get it at originally, anyways. You know what I mean? Like, so that made sense when parts kits were, like you said, like $200, or like you'd go into Big
yes,
Five and get a Russian AK for 150. Like they were falling out of everybody's pockets. Well,
yep,
fast forward now, it's like, I mean, Paul, like for the Crink project we did, like finding a parts kit that's decent for any real Bulgarian, try to find a Bulgarian parts kit at all for less than like 15 to $1,800. Like, and
Yeah.
and most of those parts kits, like you guys throw most of the parts away. Like you end up with like front and rear trunnion, barrel, bolt carrier group, and like that's about it of what goes into the gun. So
Yeah.
I think the stigma of like, well, U.S. manufacturing can't do it. No, it's that you couldn't do it at $200, like, and without using pot metal or whatever the fuck, like that was
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
fuck fall apart.
yeah,
Well,
And so,
not to mention, it's like there's so many other costs added in that people don't take into consideration. We're not in a former Soviet satellite state and can do it, for nothing. So that's the other thing. I mean,
yeah.
for
yeah,
people don't
yeah.
understand, every rifle and every pistol has excise tax built into it. Yeah, I mean, we get charged 11% for every long gun. that we build,
Been,
you know,
been
and
over
he,
and fucked.
yeah. And it's like there's so much nickel and diming. People don't realize just firearms manufacturers in general, you know, what they have to go through to try to put out
Yeah.
something that you're hoping that you break even. Because a lot of those manufacturers, that's what they're trying to do. You know, they might be trying to make, you know, obviously you want to make a profit, you know, to keep the lights on. But there are cases where, I mean, you're just breaking even or you're hoping to.
Yeah. Like cover your
So, I
costs.
mean, yeah, 100%. And then at the end of the day, like I remember buying parts kits, like original barrel Romanian kits for 59 to $79. I still have
Yep.
a original barrel setup, like me and Anthony built it together. So it's like I understand what people are saying, but you know, it's not 10, 15 years ago.
No.
So
Yeah. I,
Well,
and back
yeah. I
then
mean,
everybody was throwing out those Dong handguards too, right? That we're using, and now they're $100 a piece, if not more. So we always laugh about that.
it makes me
yeah.
think about like back in the day, like SKSs, or even think about like other surplus guns, Enfields, M1
Mhm.
carbines, M1 Grands, like the the old fuds like to go like, well, that's ridiculous. And it's like those are the same dudes who are at gun shows right now going like, I know what I got, and they're charging like 3 times what they
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
should.
yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
because back in when they were like in their 40s, they were buying SKSs for $70, and now you can't get a decent SKS for less than like 800. Like,
yeah,
and it's
That's
like,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
I remember growing up and going into Big Five and looking at the Big Five like advertisements in like the Sunday paper, like,
Yeah. The newspaper.
yeah, that's always what I rushed to was the Big Five so I could look at guns.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
and it was like, SKSs and old World War II surplus. Well, that's the thing. It's surplus. There's only so much. And when it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
a lot of these countries even that have moved past those platforms. So like they might be going into service right now because of Ukraine, but like Russia's moved on. Like all these other countries, these Balkan states have moved on as far as their service rifles, and we as a country are a huge consumer. Like, and people don't realize like a huge consumer, and
Yeah.
it's crazy that like we get to the point where now those parts kits are the cost that they are. Like you can buy a good AR, like a really good AR, for the price of like an AK parts kit. Um,
True.
and so fast forward now, Meridian is doing a lot of their own shit, and so I'll let you kind of talk to kind of what your guys' path forward is.
Yeah. I mean, we experimented with all different types of machining you know, capabilities, different stuff like, are we going to do forged trunnions? Are we going to do billet trunnions? Obviously we'll always stay away from cast trunnions and bolts and all that shit because that's not good. And, we were always focused on doing higher end stuff. So we were playing around. Originally, we were playing around with AKM stuff and trying to, modernize, the old AK platform. And then, Paul and I have always had a passion for 74 rifles. So it's kind of like we always come back to like, well, I want to build a 74 out of it. And well, we're going to have to do, if we're going to do bolts, carriers, and trunnions, that's a whole nother set, right? So if you're building out AKM stuff, you have an AKM trunnion, you have an AKM barrel, and you have an AKM bolt, right? Well, 74s have a completely different bolt. They have a completely different uh, trunnion, and they have the completely different carrier, right? So one's a thin stem and one's a thick stem. So we've always leaned towards doing 74s, and we just kind of came to the conclusion after doing a bunch of US made AKM stuff. We're like, you know what? Fuck this. We're gonna make the jump and go into the 100 series stuff because the 100 series stuff is the most modernized uh, internal version of what's being used overseas right now with the AK, and what Russia's currently using right now. And with the 100 series platform, you use the same carrier for 5.56, 7.62 by 39, and 5.45. It's the same type of trunnion, same profile. Obviously, some internals are different. And obviously, the bolt is pretty much the same. Obviously, you're changing the face and the diameter of the internals and different extractors and stuff like that. But the overall machining process, you're doing the same thing. You're not completely changing it. So off of our forgings, we can do 5.56, 7.62, and 545 guns, and that was kind of the goal for us, is to have the three main calibers, and be able to be universal with it. And the 100 series was kind of the way to go, and that's the path we've taken, and we're moving on with that right now. And yeah, we got some pretty interesting shit coming out. So
So if somebody was to come to go order a gun off your site right now, they would be getting.
if they were to go to our site right now and order a gun right now, it would deny them because we have nothing in stock. So, but anything moving forward, including our back orders, so like all of our original Volk stuff was going to be AKM stuff, but we actually made the change during that time. So that was what caused a big delay on this last run, was we were transitioning from AKM stuff to 100 series stuff. So anybody getting rifles literally from the last month to 2 months is getting 100 series rifles. So all of our customers that have back orders with us right now, we weren't going to go, hey, sorry, here's your AKM stuff. By the way, we're doing new shit. Fuck you. Right. So we decided to give
Yeah,
everybody all the 100 series stuff. So everybody's getting the upgraded, all the new upgraded platforms, the base internals. So
yeah,
Good.
yeah.
That's badass. And then obviously we are 2 weeks away from the show. Um, is there anything that we can expect that you guys are going to be talking about at Shot Show?
Not We're not going to talk much about what we're doing at SHOT Show, because I'm a firm believer that SHOT Show is just a place where everybody just gives away their secrets, what they're going to do for the year, and then nobody does it. So the only thing that we really talk about is we have 5.56, 5.45, 7.62 by 39, and maybe 9mm stuff coming this year. So, and it'll all be 100 series based.
Obviously, you could see I was letting you lead that answer. Um, so cool. Then just there you go, guys. We got a little bit of background of how we got where we are now. Let's talk AKs. So um, I know with like ARs, you have basically it's like the thing that makes them tick is you have a good barrel and a good bolt. Like basically everything else is bullshit. Like you can have a rattly ass upper and lower. You can have like if you have a good barrel and bolt, the gun's gonna run for the most part. Like and it's gassed properly. But like those are kind of your money makers. What do you guys consider your kind of money makers as far as like what makes a good AK?
Uh, Pretty much everything on the AK. The AK needs to, barrel number one, right? Headspace to bolt, right? So bolt number two, your trunnion and your receiver. And the receiver really needs to be tits, because with the AR-15 platform, it's an aluminum receiver. It's a solid receiver, right? That shit's not moving anywhere. It's not flexing. When you have a trunnion, which is 4140, either billet or forged steel, and then that's riveted in. Your receiver is going to be the weakest point, right? And that's what's going to flex and move. And if you have a piece of shit receiver, if you've ever watched an AK shoot in slow motion, you're going to have all kinds of shit going everywhere. So your receiver has to be tight, your rivets have to be tight. There's a lot of moving parts that have to be on point in the AK platform. Even though they're like, oh, yes, you can put it together, you can shoot it, it's still going to fucking run. And Paul and I have tested that theory with so many different bullshit parts, and they will still run. But in order to make it shoot well, and the way we like doing it, you got to have barrel, bolt, carrier, trunnion, receiver. The rest of the stuff is fugazi. I mean, your sights and all that stuff. Gas port has to be on point. There's a lot of AKs still that are overgassed, and people don't realize that. AR-15s, pop your gas block off, you can check your gas port, right? That's pretty simple. Obviously, you got some AR-15s that have pinned gas blocks, so you can't. But there's a lot of AKs out there. It's really hard to check the gas port for some of these customers, because you have idiots sitting there just blowing big old monster holes in the barrel just to make sure that the gas block, when it gets pressed on, is actually sitting over it. So um, so you're going to have barrel, bolt, carrier, trunnion, receiver, and you got to make sure that gas block or that gas port is dialed in. So it's
Yeah,
pretty much
I was gonna say the people don't think about the fact that most um, what's it called, the service rifles tend to be overgassed anyways. Like even we in the U.S. on the civilian side really like to talk about how um, soft guns are, and companies will detune their gun because, especially when you first get it, it's not dirty. It's not. It hasn't had a whole bunch of rounds ran through it. You're not deploying with it, like, and so they run kind of on the ragged edge of reliability for some of these really soft shooting guns. But like even our work guns, like that whole, like, 4 o'clock ejection is perfect and all this stuff. Like, and you've actually heard Mike from Sons of Liberty talk about it, where he actually prefers a little bit heavier gas because as the gun dirties, especially be shooting suppressed, like you end up with a really anemic gun. Um, or when you tune it to be ran suppressed and then you take the suppressor off, then you start having issues, especially when it gets dirty because the added back pressure of the can, etc. Um, and that was actually, this actually leads perfectly into how hard is it to tune an AK for suppressor use. And I know there's historically versus like what you guys are doing now.
yeah. Well, back in the days, like I said, companies, you get Wassers that would come in, and those gas ports were just fucking monsters, and you get inexperienced builders that were drilling out these gas ports, and we've done it. I did it at the very beginning. I was like, oh, that's the number everybody runs. I'm gonna fucking do the same thing. And then I started realizing, like, oh fuck, this is not right. This is way too much. And then, Paul and I would get into the thing is like, hey, let's, when we're creating a gas port, let's go smallest and work our way up, right? And then we just started experimenting with different sizes and worked our way. And it has to do with so much, what your spring rate is, what your headspace is, because your headspace, the bolt it's all the timing within the carrier and the trunnion. So that gas affects all of that lockup, right? People don't realize that. So you can look at some AK bolts and you can see the wear, how it's wearing improperly. It'll wear like a little bit more on one lug or the another lug, whether it's overgassed or whatnot. And but the gassing back in the days was just, they were pigs, and you couldn't suppress rifles because the number one, the springs were too weak, right? You had huge monster fucking gas ports, and then the biggest thing of all, the barrel threads were not concentric, right? And you look at Arsenal stuff, and that people like praise Arsenal, and for the last 5-6 years that stuff has been shit, and we've literally seen the most fucked up barrels with bends in them, stuff that is, out around by like 15 thou. Like, we have videos of those barrels just flapping back and forth when we're trying to, dial in threads, and it's impossible. So your threads, got to make sure that shit's concentric. And that was one of the things we've done is, even before we jumped into doing the adjustable gas blocks that we do now, Paul and I messed around with suppressors all the time, right? And we found a sweet spot. Like, we figured it out. We figured out, what type of recoil spring to run, and what size gas port to run, that you can run suppressed, unsuppressed, reliably, without having an adjustable gas block. And we did that for years, and it ran really, really good. My issue was I wanted it to be able to run subsonics. Like, I was like, we need to go fucking subsonics. We need it in with any gun, you're not going to be able to really find that super happy medium. Look at 300 blackout. You're still going to have to change spring rates and all that fun stuff. Change gas port sizes. So that's when we came up with the adjustable gas block, was where we can overgas our guns just a little bit, like you talked about, right? And give the customer the ability to detune their rifle, just by switching the gas block down a couple settings. And that's stuff we've been playing with for quite a while, and we finally really figured it out. I really truly think we have the best adjustable gas system for an AK platform right now. The amount of time and energy and effort we put into this, and failures, it was crazy. We learned so much. I mean, I think we've gone through 5 revisions of that block, and we started it back in 2017 was the first part of it. So,
Jesus.
but yeah, it's, yeah. So But for the AK platform, it's, you just got to figure out most AKs, most newer AKs, you're going to be able to suppress them, right? But you got to figure out where they're coming from. Like that's the biggest thing is what barrels are on them, who's making the barrels, are they concentric? And then for the gas ports, I'm starting to see a lot of manufacturers starting to, like you said, detune the rifles, and it's not really detuning; they're doing it to the proper gas settings. They're kind of realizing it that like, oh, hey, let's not just blow these holes open, So
Well, I just think
you're starting to.
it's not necessarily detuning as much as like I think what was acceptable was for shitty ammo years ago, and that was the known like spec. And
Mhm.
I think especially, and that's a question I'm going to ask in a sec, which is like as ammo progresses and we're not shooting ammo from the 60s anymore, that you don't necessarily need the whale's vagina gas port to make the fucking gun run. And um and I think I actually saw old Tom Fuller, not Tom, or Jim Fuller talk about he changed gas piston lengths um, on some of his guns to affect uh, tuning a bit too. I think probably to account for the fact that it was overgassed or um, some of that stuff. But the
The gas piston length obviously is going to have an effect on it. It just depends on what the barrel size is. That's where it's really going to come in to play, right? So the second you go, standard AKM gas piston is going to be pretty good up to about 12.5, right? After 12.5, when you start dropping down, that's when you're going to want to change your gas piston up to something a little bit shorter. 12.5 is with the standard AKM length or even 74 length. That's the go-to. There's no need to,
12.5
go
master
with smaller
race.
pistons. Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, but yeah, but in all reality, man, and this actually really brings up a good point. And Paul and I have a surplus of some of the old ammo. I've always found that the older ammo shoots better, right? Like, and it was also overpowered, right? So to have these large gas ports really never made sense, right?
Hmm.
I think it was just more of like, hey, this gun's going to run no matter what.
Yeah.
And back then, people weren't suppressing AKs, so they didn't care. They wanted to make sure you could dump thousands and thousands of rounds through this thing, and the gun's still going to fucking work, right? That was the goal, right? And I'd love to do some testing with some of the older ammo and actually do some like velocity testing and start seeing real numbers and start collecting some real data on that for some of the old stuff versus what there is new, because I'm seeing actually a lot more of the guns ammo now that is underpowered more than anything, right? And most of that stuff is made, well, there's a couple, Winchester has been pretty underpowered. Paul, what was the other fucking ammo company with the brass shit that came across? The Bellum, is that what it
So
was?
yeah, there's Bellum, yeah, and then there's a couple brands that were it was 760 by 39, but people don't realize it was designed for bolt guns.
Really?
Yeah.
And so it was like yeah, it was brass cased. And we had some customers, we had quite a few customers, they'd buy this crap because they'd have to buy it for indoor ranges and stuff like that. And I'm talking about it was undercharged by 20 to 30% because we had customers send in ammo, we pulled projectiles, we weighed the powder, and we were shocked.
Damn.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So I truly believe the older stuff was a lot nastier and higher powered than what we're getting today. Except, I mean, you are getting some other stuff like the tele ammunition we just got. That shit was fucking hot. We got
Yeah.
2,500 feet per second, right? On a 14.5 barrel.
Yeah, I think out of what was a 14.5 barrel, it was 2504 was our max, and our medium or standard velocity was like 2449, and
damn.
SDs were they were sub 14,
Wow.
which
Yeah.
I think is
Yeah.
fantastic for what we were
Yeah.
doing. It was stupid.
Do you
Yeah.
guys have
Yeah.
a
And normally
do you guys have a shop chrono?
Yeah,
we
we
do
got a Garmin and some other ones. Yeah,
Nice.
the
yeah,
Magneto one.
yeah.
I if you guys don't know, Paul, actually the first time I actually met Anthony was I invited Paul out to my SoCal class, a couple of years ago, and they brought a couple of Volks out with LPVOs, and we were getting impacts to 800, correct? Like um, with 7.62 by 39
Yeah.
Volks.
So no, actually, those weren't Volks. What that was, ironically, those were two rifles off the rack that I think that customers they couldn't pay their remainder, and all we did was we just threw SLR handguards on some M4. We had our M4 buffer tubes. I think we had an M4 buffer tube on one of them, and some other stuff, and just threw on some good glass actually, um,
I
and
think
tried
one
to.
was a, I think one was a I think was one was a pestilence, right? That we painted.
Yeah, it was actually my pestilence.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, threw
Yeah.
on yeah, you had a Definitive Arms M4 bolt-on adapter, and we did that and SLR handguard, and we had some decent bipods, and I hit up a buddy of mine um that works for Vortex, and he sent out some 1 to 10s for those.
And I
And
think that was the only problem we ran into that class was the weight of that
trigger.
big scope on that side mount.
That was the first
Yeah, it was
class.
flopping.
So the second class you're thinking. The first class, Anthony never came out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had my PSL, right. That was the first time. And I'll say this, the how you taught me to build a range card and to be able to true a rifle, I took that information that second time because the ammo that we were running, I think it was Tela. Or no, it wasn't Tela. I'm sorry. I was not not Wolf. It
Golden
was
Tiger.
it was no Tool ammo. It was Tula.
Mm.
It was Tool ammo. And they had nothing on ballistics. They weren't giving me anything. So I was pulling projectiles. I was measuring overall lengths, case overall lengths. I was figuring out all that stuff, and I created a range card based off that ammo to those rifles when we trued the weekend before, and that stuff it was dialed. Like, sure, it looks like at 820 or 850 yards, you were saying it looks like VW bugs in the air, you
Yep.
know. But we made hits, no problem, and it wasn't any special ammo. It wasn't match ammo, you know.
No,
So
it was awesome to see.
yeah.
Um, it's funny. You're not actually not talking, Paul, but your image is. That was fun. Um,
Max headroom.
that's how it goes for internet connections. Um, no, and then if you guys didn't know, Meridian is now making their own barrels, and you guys are making your own hammer forged barrels, correct?
Yep. Yeah. Well, we're not doing the hammer forging. We have a company doing the hammer forging for us to our specs. We had some mandrels designed and did everything to spec. So, which is pretty cool. All of our new stuff now is 1 in 7 twist 5R that gives you the ability to run subsonic stuff as well. And that was a big thing of mine was, and Paul and I have nerded out on the idea of being able to run subsonic because the normal twist rates are like 1 in 9 for some of these barrels. And I want to be able to shoot like 220 grain projectiles out of there and then actually stabilize. So
nice. Yeah, I will say you guys see what's the average accuracy?
I fucking know that.
Now I think your your volume's acting up. Yeah. I can't hear you at all. Tony, can you hear him?
no, I can't hear him. I can hear chips crunching. There we go. I can
Yeah,
see
there
him.
we go.
Okay.
You there?
Yeah, sorry, my wife opened
There we
her. I had my Bluetooth on and it connected to her AirPods.
Tell
Was she
her we
eating
could
chips?
hear her munching on chips.
Eating. We heard her munching on chips.
Yep. There we go. Okay, so you guys are making your own barrels. I heard 1 in 7 hammer forged. And you guys
Yep.
have always been known, at least lately, anyways, for being concentric and ready to suppress uh,
Hmm.
without any concerns. That's like the whole reason Dead Air made the uh, Wolverine
Wolverine. Yeah.
was because of the non-concentricity of most AK barrels.
Correct. Yep.
So,
Yep.
and I know at least last time I checked, anyways, your guys' guns come suppressor ready, whereas Rifle Dynamics guns you have to pay extra to get them suppressor tuned.
Oh yeah, I didn't even know that.
That was like when Jake at 1911 Syndicate did his video about your guys' guns versus Rifle Dynamics. He brought that point up as well. Um, and they may have changed it in the last year or whatever, but that at last I knew, anyways, that's where it was. Um,
Yeah,
And
that's the
we've been
that's the
doing that
goal
for
for
a
us.
while.
Yeah, I mean that's been since we very first started. Like we were always making them concentric, even when they were parts kits. Like if you built we built out an 88, Tula, right? It's still going to be concentric, and you can throw whatever you want on there. That's the non-concentric barrels bothered the shit out of me. I just didn't understand it. So
mm,
And we're one of the few manufacturers, I think, when we send out a rifle, it's just not, you know, throwing shims on the muzzle device and, clock pin welding and sending it. I mean, we're we're verifying concentricity at the barrel and then also with the can. So
yeah, so
we have
if you
we
look at a lot of AR companies and any companies in general, what we've noticed is guys will stack shims up, right? And they're timing their muzzle devices, and it's like your muzzle device comes with a stack of shims. You slap your shims on, you time them. Obviously, use rock set, and you're golden, right? Um, the correct way that we have found is being able to tune and time the back of the muzzle device to the barrel, and that is to us that's the proper way of doing it. So you're not stacking all these fucking shims up, because you can have a stack of shims right there, and then when you go to tighten that thing down, it's gonna walk if one's off a little bit, or if it
yeah,
doesn't have enough interface. So for us, we will come on the backside on the lathe and actually remove little bits of thread as we're timing it, and we have some guys there at the shop that are just amazing at timing these muzzle devices and making sure that they're dialed in. So, I mean, to the point to where we'll ruin barrels and have to swap barrels because it's not timed perfectly. So,
that's badass. Um, yeah, I mean, I've had zero issues. My two Sandman now are living on my two Meridian guns because I'm going away from chemo personally. With I just think there's better options out there, and chemo lately has been super inconsistent with its uh, with what's coming on cans and the chemo adapters themselves. I just baffle struck a brand new uh, Lazarus 6 that, I mean, I know how to tighten a can, and I actually over tighten typically because I'm like, this motherfucker can't come off. It's not like I'm like half doing it, and I had one back off and loosen up, and I
Mhm.
baffle struck it. So um, I think those taper mount, whether it's Xeno or Hub, like the Reardon adapters, I think are kind of and I think, even like the CGS attachment method is the same style. It's a thread with a taper, um, kind of. Hux works, same thing, threaded with a taper. Um, I think that tends to be the most consistent way these days to uh, put a can on. But the you guys, if somebody's asking this, um, so where are you guys sitting? I'm curious how you're going to answer this, Anthony. Your guys' guns typically, what is the lowest price of one of your guns historically, and then moving forward?
historically, I think our lowest price gun at one point was, I think it was $1,600. Paul, was it a standard UCR back in the days?
Yep.
Yeah, I think yeah, back in the days it was like $1,600. Going forward, we're gonna cap it. We're gonna, now that we're manufacturing all of our parts, we're not gonna go through and rape the customers and go, oh, fucking, you're gonna pay $3,500 for this, but you know what I mean? Because some of the stuff was only $3,500 because you couldn't get, a Zenco rail system for less than $1,200. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So going forward, what we're doing right now is we have 100 series base models that are going to be dealer and distributor only. So we're going to get in the dealer and distributor world, and those will be our base models, and they'll be in the about 16 to $1,800 range is what I think we're looking at for those things, and that will be off the shelf if you walk into a dealer and you can buy one of our rifles. And then moving forward, I mean, I can't even. We have a $10,000 24 karat gold fully engraved Bulgarian underfolder. So,
Yep.
so price wise, it's whatever, it really
Well,
depends on
I
what we
know
do.
I want to bring that up because people will be like, well, I'm not going to buy a whatever dollar AK, and it's like, well, anymore, like even like Palmetto AKs are right just under $1,000, and
Yeah.
they are using cast parts, um, and so you spend $600 more, $700 more, but you have a gun that has a lot better barrel, longevity, trunnions, bolt carriers, etc., and 100 series parts.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point. I when people say, I want to buy, like a PSA or a fucking Century or whatever that you want to do, I want them to buy that. I want them to experience that. I want them to run that. I want them to beat the shit out of it, figure out where it fails, understand that platform. It's like your first car, right? You get out there and you just beat the fuck out of it, run it, race it, understand it, and then start dipping into new stuff. And I think the Palmetto stuff and the Century stuff is a good starting point for people. I think it's great. Go ahead, run it, beat it up, push it to its limits, and then you understand it. And then when you jump into something a little bit better, whether it's ours or somebody else's, then you'll appreciate it more. You'll understand it, and then it gives you more of a feel. But I think everybody needs to run those old school Wassers. They need to run those, they need to run Palmettos. They need to run that stuff to understand, the steps and the next level that we're doing. Because I guarantee you run one of our platforms and you go downwards, you're like, oh fuck. But people they need to do it. It's like driving a stick with power steering, with no power steering and manual brakes. You got to get used to it, run it, and then kind of start stepping up your game and then experimenting, with different stuff. I think that's always the best way for firearms is start with low budget stuff, beat it up, like run it until it breaks, like maximize that rifle platform until you can't do anything else with it, and then then start stepping up your game. That's just kind of been my philosophy with some of this stuff, especially with the AK platform.
I think it's one of those things where I push this a lot on Instagram, which is like you're answering questions you haven't fully formulated yet, and I think not. I mean, I'm definitely a buy once cry once guy, but I see a lot of people buy stuff and then they're just as frustrated with it as if they had bought cheaper stuff because they they bought capacity or they don't understand what they just paid the money for. And so
Correct.
when you dabble a little bit when you're just starting out and you answer or you build your own questions, it helps kind of it helps you feel better when you make the bigger, better choices that you spent your money wisely for something you actually want.
Yep. And number one, you gotta run it. I see a lot of these guys buying our guns and putting them in the safes and not running it. It's like that's cool and everything, but run the shit out of it, beat it up, understand it, and then then you really really enjoy it once you start pushing that to those limits. And that's why I say, if you want to buy a PSA Century, whatever, do it. Like fucking run the shit out of it. Wait till it fails, and then either rebuild it or buy something else.
Yeah. Somebody asked on Patreon, um, if not one of your guys's, where do you guys see, kind of like in ARs, you have like the lower end stuff, and then you have like the BCM, Daniel Defense, like the lowest, like good guns. What do you guys consider
Mm-hmm.
those right now?
Custom
That's a
built.
tough one for me. Yeah, it's got to be custom
I
built. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be custom built. It's paying a qualified builder to build something that you want. Buying
So
stuff
it's
off the
so
rack is
it's a kit
always
build.
cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think finding a qualified builder to build something is I'm seeing too many of the current manufacturers right now really fucking half-ass it just because they can. Right, and that sucks. Everybody's, there's a lot of these manufacturers that are, we're watching them buy castings and shit like that from Taiwan and then machining them here and saying, oh yeah, it's a US made gun, and you're like, no dude, it's not. And they're sacrificing quality, and they're throwing a shit ton of money at marketing. So I mean, as of right now, I would go, if you could find, God, yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I wouldn't even say Arsenal anymore, man. I really wouldn't. I guess, because what's their price range? They're in the $1,800, right?
Yeah, I mean, last time I looked,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
it. If you can find it, unless so.
Support your local builder. Go find a builder that is trustworthy. Do a shit ton of homework and do, get as much information as possible, and have that rifle built to your specs. And then go down that route. You know, that's what I'm saying right now. If it's not, I don't see anybody else doing good shit right now. It sucks. You know, there's unfortunately, it's a greed game that we're seeing right now.
It's funny because, like, Paul, I asked you that same question, I think, whatever, 2 or 3 years ago, and the answer was different. Um,
Well, yeah, because I think at that point you still had Wassers coming in,
Hmm.
and we
Yeah.
talked about like higher end stuff. I mean, yeah, we were talking about older arsenals that were still floating around. You could pick up a used arsenal at the time. Yeah, it was gonna be 12 to 1500, or I think it was like right around $1,200, but they were decent rifles. Um,
Y- Yeah, if you
everything's
could pick up a,
changed.
if you could
Everything.
pick, if, yeah, if you could pick up an old Wasser, that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those guns are still floating around if you buy bide your time and watch the classifieds and stuff. It's just you can't go to
Yeah.
a you're not going to find it at your local store, or unless it's on like a consignment rack or something.
Which it might
Yeah, but
be. The biggest thing is like what.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
I'm just saying if
even
it is,
then,
walk in and check it and look at the rivets and all that stuff like Tony was saying. You got to look at the rivets, you just look at the
yeah,
quality of it, make sure. And then it's just like buying a car. It's a roll of the dice. We'll see what happens.
yes, the Wassers that I've seen lately, and we've pulled apart, man, those rivets are barely hanging in there. And it's still gonna work. It's still gonna run, but the real poor quality. The receivers still are fucking half-ass. That's why there's so many builders out there that have the ability to build you a really nice platform. The guys who don't have, that are not trying to go to this like next level, that do parts kits builds. I'm still a real fan of just building your own shit, man. Having somebody build it for you.
I think
There's,
what
if
are
you can,
what
if
are
you
some of the
can,
good custom builders right now that you guys know of, like CW Gunworks, you guys?
mm-hmm,
Um,
yeah,
I mean, obviously Fuller
CW.
Phoenix.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything come out of Jim's place, any new stuff come out of his place for a while. Um, God, I was just talking about builders. I totally spaced. I have a whole list of them. I've been out of that custom builder thing for so long. um, yeah, I'd have to really
There's
dig through and before we actually put a
there's
name on
verified
somebody.
sources. there's
Yeah.
guys that are throwing out there and they're making good stuff, that they stand behind it, and that's the biggest thing. Um, and half the time, just whoever the builder is, just ask the questions. Like, okay, for one thing, hey, I know most people are gonna ask, how much is it gonna cost? Well, before you go down that route, what do I want? What am I gonna do with it? Right? How many rounds are am I going to run it per year? Cool. And then let's talk to the builder. It's like, okay, so what type of barrel should I have? Should I have a chrome barrel? Should I have a nitride barrel? Am I going to run a can on it? Do I want a traditional build? Do I want a more modernized setup? Do I want some like crazy competition AK that you're going to run at some of these AK comps, stuff like that? You just got to figure out your purpose. And it's like what you always say, you find your 80%, and for the most part, you're right there. So you're not going to find one setup to do it all. Um, but at the end of the day, I'll be honest, like even on range trips, I bring out a 16-inch AKM base platform in 760 by 39 with irons. And we run that through all the guys. And if you're proficient with that, you can move on. And it works. So
Um, aside from AKs, what platform, if you guys AK stopped, you guys couldn't build an AK, what would Meridian do next?
I can't really answer that question right now
um
because we're already working on it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll
I guess my I
One of
guess my
those
answer I
things.
guess my answer would be like every time you text us with another idea of what you want to do, we just say yes.
Uzis,
Dude,
Uzis
we
and
like hey, we like
Mac
every
10s.
Uzis, back tens, dude, like everything.
well, if you guys
We like
obviously you guys
everything.
if you guys are on Patreon, you guys know my fascination with all the foreign service guns. These are two of the guys that I text constantly about roller locks, fouls,
Hmm.
M1As, SIGs, all the things. So, uh, yeah, we can just leave it there.
Yeah, I think if in all reality, if AKs go away, we're just going to build a modernized version of it. I'll
Yeah,
leave it at that.
makes sense.
So, yep.
Now we'll talk a little bit. And we're actually almost an hour and a half, and I told you guys about an hour. But guy buys his first AK. What do you like? I tell people like with ARs, like get a spare bolt, like have some more gas rings. What are some parts that somebody can have on hand to keep their AK like as their hard use gun?
You're going to want to do everything internally for that bolt. That's going to be number one. It's going to be really, really hard, with some of these guns out there to have a replacement bolt that matches right up. That is one of the advantages that we have right now is our bolts are pretty much universal. Everything's within a thou. So you can use our bolts in every fucking gun that we make, which was, most companies don't do. So, I would just do all the internals for the bolt, all of your springs, your hammer springs, get a really good trigger system because those trigger systems fail. If some of the new US stuff that's out there fails, have a backup trigger. We've seen hammers break. We've seen all kinds of fun stuff go wrong with triggers. So have a updated trigger system, obviously, with all extra parts for it. Your whoa, thing's falling. You're gonna want to have your recoil spring, right, as well, and then yeah, I mean I think that's really it, and some
And you
lube.
and you guys
That and
started.
just lube and a bunch of mags.
What mags do you guys
Yeah,
recommend?
mags and lube. Dude, there's so many out there that are really good. It's Magpul, X-Tex, US Palms, Steel Mags. Even like Paul and I were fucking around with those KCI. What are they? Korean mags? Paul,
Yeah,
is that
yeah,
what they are? Yeah, and those things are actually
yeah. The
really fucking
KCI
nice.
mags,
I remember.
they
Yeah,
lock
I
up
remember they
nice.
sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they used to suck, and then the new batch of stuff that we got, we were like, holy shit, this is really nice. So if
I
you're looking
talked to
at
those
steel
guys. Those
stuff,
guys are I think are really trying to up their game, which is good.
that's cool.
Um,
Yeah.
the oh good. I don't know if you guys can see, my video is super delayed, but the audio is good. So, and I just
Yep.
asked that in the comments, and they said the audio is still perfect. So we're good
Cool.
to go. It's funny because I'm hearing Anthony talk, but his face is just super stoic. Well, good. AKs. So I appreciate you guys jumping on. The I appreciate your guys' support. Obviously, we just gave away one of your guys' guns. It's fantastic. Thank you guys for being good friends, and I look forward to all of the things that we talk about on a regular basis coming to fruition over the next year. As long as
Yeah,
Paul can
it's been pretty cool.
as long as Paul can wrangle Anthony's good idea fairy consistently.
That will never happen, man.
No, I know, but that's what makes you guys you. But
Yeah.
thanks guys for jumping on. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. I'll let you guys get back. I know both you guys have women who, I mean, I do too, sitting behind me to get back to. Thanks for taking the time, guys, and answering some questions. And if you guys have any other questions for Paul, you guys can leave them in the comments on Patreon, or put them on Patreon, because what I'll do is I'll take those and I'll text them to Paul, and then I can get his answer and I can respond to you guys on Patreon just with what Paul or Anthony text me to make sure that we get all your guys' AK questions answered. If you guys are AK curious, obviously these are the boys to talk to. Spend your money wisely. And I can say without a doubt, if you guys spend your hard-earned money on a Meridian AK, that you will be taken care of to the full extent of their capability, because I've watched them do it with dozens and dozens of people. So I appreciate you both, and I'm going to leave for Texas tomorrow and be busy the rest of the weekend.
And then we're seeing you
Right on,
at
brother.
SHOT Show or
Safe
what? dude?
travels.
And then
Yeah.
I'll see you guys at SHOT Show.
Awesome.
Later, boys.
Yep.
Later.
All right, brother.
Thanks.
Take it easy.
Appreciate it, dude.